Our goal here today is to ensure that you are fully prepared and have all the valuable information you need to be successful as you're considering this pivot.
My first career was with Imperial Oil. Those of you unfamiliar, it's a subsidiary of ExxonMobil and based in Canada. It's was certainly for the longest time Canada's largest oil and gas concern, still a major player in the economy. And I started there, and in one of my reviews, they said, "Hey, you're not an engineer, so you're not going to be able to progress too far in our organization because we need you to be trusted to supervise our energized assets. And without that engineering background, that's not really practical." So that was the cue for me to go leave and go chase another career. So I went off to MBA school and then was recruited by Deloitte, and I stayed there for 30 years. During that time, I've had the opportunity to recruit lots of people in from oil and gas to go work in big consulting firm, in my case, Deloitte. And I used to teach young consultants how to be successful in their careers. And so I watched a lot of people kind of get recruited in by big firms, and then some succeeded, but many did not. And so the purpose of this conversation today really is to share with you the kind of secrets of success, like the ones who really do really well. What is it that they do differently from everyone else? And to do that, I'm just going to share my screen and draw some pictures, things that I would typically show consultants who are kind of questioning how does big consulting actually work. So the first thing I wanted to talk through, though, was like, where is this conversation fit in the context of, say, a career pivot? And in an engineering career pivot, you have to think about your career following down a cascade, if you like. And this is our method for teaching people how to manage their careers through times of change or when they feel that there's a need for change. And the cascade works like this. You start here and you prepare your personal goals and your objectives. And once you've got those framed, then you can consider the industries and opportunities where your goals and your objectives might be best satisfied. After that, you consider your personal possibilities. What is possible for you personally and professionally in light of what's going on in the industry and the opportunities that are there. Then in our method, we look at the gaps, like what do you need to close so that you can be considered a candidate for the possibilities that you see that are out there. And then finally, we put together what's called a pyramid, which is your game plan to close your gaps and recraft your messaging, how you present yourself to the world so that you are considered a candidate for the opportunities that you've highlighted. And the thing that I wanted to mention and be very clear about here is that consulting is its own industry. It's so when you are kind of zeroing in and thinking about, I might get an opportunity to work as a consultant, just remember, you are changing industries. You might be going in as an oil and gas consultant, that's fine, but consulting is its own animal. And so just you have to be aware of that. So it's the first thing I wanted to highlight, that consulting, jumping to consulting is not something you should do lightly. It is a bona fide career shift. Now, so first secret of consulting is you need to understand the organization structure of the consulting organization that you're choosing to join. Big consulting firms, and that would include the McKinseys, Booz, the Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, EY, generally have their own internal organization structure. Common to the big ones is a structure that is on three dimensions. So I'm just going to draw this as a little diagram to kind of show you what the dimensions are. And those dimensions, the first one is the service dimension. And a service is consulting or tax or advisory service of some kind. Could be capital markets, but it is this sort of service dimension. The second is the geography, like where are you based? And the reason geography is important is because assets are there, buildings and leases and the like. And the third is which industry are you in? Now, in my career at when I first started in consulting, industry wasn't a dimension because consulting was relatively immature at the time, and consultants could quite easily go from industry to industry to industry, practicing and doing work. That's just no longer the case. The community of the customer base out there is now very much insistent that people have at least understand the industry you're going into, and that you're intending to service. So a way to think about it is I put little hash marks here to kind of break these up. But one type of service might be supply chain. You're working in the supply chain area. In geography, you might be doing that in the US Southeast. And the industry you're doing that in is oil and gas. So say you might be in Louisiana and you're a specialist in oil and gas. And what this does is this, if you think about it as a Venn diagram, you've actually created a little space here around these three dimensions where you sit in the middle of those three dimensions. And in a perfect world, you make yourself as unique as you possibly can on those dimensions so that any work that comes in that is in supply chain, in oil and gas, in the US Southeast comes to you as the consultant. So that's understanding this organization structure before you go in is actually very important so that you know where the power centers are and where the budgets lie and how things are measured. And so this is a P&L structure. It took me a long time to figure this out, and it does change over time. So you have to be very mindful. In the Deloitte world, the service and the geography were the two thick lines. They were the strongest budget centers. Industry was much less strong. And I think that's just a maturity thing, to be honest. But it is useful to at least know that there is that the P&L follows the structure, and understanding where the strength lies is actually really key. So there are trade-offs, as you can almost right away detect. If you're in the U.S. Southeast and you're working in oil and gas, your market might actually be quite small. And because of the nature of consulting, if there isn't work for you in the Southeast, in that particular geography, that particular industry, then you're going to have to hop on an airplane and go find the work. And this is a trade-off. So if your goals and your objectives are, I want to be home every night and, play with my dog and take courses at school and contribute to my community, but you end up in a career choice in consulting that actually puts you on an airplane every week, you will not satisfy your goals and your objectives. And this is certainly one of the biggest reasons why people drift away from consulting over time, is that they have made career choices which force them to compromise their personal goals and their aspirations, and then they leave. The big firms, for instance, have a turnover rate of 15 to 20%. Now, I worked in oil and gas. If you have a turnover rate in oil and gas above 7%, you are losing so much industrial knowledge, you can really damage your organization. Whereas in consulting, they kind of anticipate it's going to be 15%, and they actually even aim for that level of turnover. But for inorganic, organic turnover, I should say, where people lose confidence in their careers, so they want to change, a big reason is because how the organization makes money and the career they've chosen for themselves are incompatible with their personal goals and objectives. Now imagine if this is a three-dimensional matrix, and what you've done is you've crafted a kind of ball, a circle. This ball, I call this your career ball. And the career ball is really, really interesting. At your start of your career, where you may not know very much in consulting, know very little about the industrial world, just have an undergraduate degree or an MBA, your ball might be quite big. In other words, you're quite happy to work in supply chain, don't really care about industry, and you'll hop on an airplane every week, and you're happy to do that. You have a really big ball. But over time, your ball has to constrict and compact, and the reason for that I'll discuss in a bit. Your ball has to become smaller and much more focused, so that over time, your value proposition to the community and to the rest of the business you're in, the consulting firm, becomes much more crisp, and you're not as contention with too many other people inside for your career. So I've actually I've actually drawn this picture in a much neater way. This is a bit like watching a a cooking show. Hey, I've actually had the pie baking in the oven. Here it all is. Well, I'm going to hand draw the pie, and then what we'll do is, if you've signed up for the session, we'll send you these slides as a memory jog as to what we wanted to talk about. So there's the first issue, organization structure. Now I want to talk about the career funnel. Now, how does it actually work in consulting? Well, the funnel looks like this, and it's a classic hourglass structure, and has a shape like that. You can imagine there's a pinch point here, and that pinch point is where you transition from being just a employee of a consulting firm to potentially an owner, where people invite you in to become an owner of the firm. So this is the point of ownership right here. When does this happen in consulting? Well, it is somewhere between 7 and 10 years if you say came directly out of MBA school. But and then once you become an owner, then you can spend anywhere between 20 and 30 years as an owner in the business. So as you can see, this part of the funnel up here, you are the top of the funnel in here. You are an apprentice. You're learning, and the bulk of your career actually is going to be spent as an owner of the business, doing different things. In my case, it was 9 years to spend in the sort of before I became an owner, and then once I became an owner in the firm, I stayed exactly 20 years. And then left, because there's lots of ways to make money in life. You don't have to, consulting's one way, but it's not the only way to make money. You can do also different things. And so what's happening, as you can imagine, is your career ball is in the funnel here. And the place for your career ball, or where your ball fits, is it's working its way down through this funnel. And over time, as you can see, to get down in through that pinch point where the owners say, hey, we want to make you an owner in the business, your ball has to be small, sharp, and crisp enough to make a compelling business case so it fits through that pinch point. And a lot of one of the challenges I find with senior professionals who join the industry is that they don't give enough thought to the choices they're making around what it is that they're doing. They kind of follow into it by default. And whereas if you think strategically and thoughtfully about how you manage your career, you can pass your way through this apprenticeship phase quite quickly and pass directly into an ownership level. A good example of this is a fellow who joined us. He was an investment banker, and he was a university lecturer in energy. Smart chap, and because he had been a university lecturer, he had a very big network outside of as an investment banker, a very big network outside of the university system where he was working. So he had lots of contacts. And because he was an investment banker, he's very persuasive. He had to sell people on his ideas. So he very quickly became a deal maker, a merger and acquisition specialist in energy in Western Canada. And that ball was super tight. There was nobody else doing that in Deloitte at the time. He was the only one. So any deals that came in, he was central and instrumental to them. So he got to ride this wave of work. And poof, he had a very compelling business case when it became time to become an owner. In my case, my choices that I made, I said, well, I'm going to work in oil and gas, and I'm going to work in IT strategy, and I'm going to do that in Western Canada. And I did that because there was no other professional in all of Deloitte that was working in oil and gas IT strategy in Western Canada. I was in a market of one. And what that meant was anytime an opportunity showed up, it came to me related to that. I was the guy that people would go to. My ball was super tight, really small, and it was able to pass through that ownership filter. Prior to that, I was just doing IT strategy. That's fine, but I could go into retail, I could go into healthcare, it felt really good, lots of stuff going on, but not a very compelling business case. Because when the world started to really value industrial know-how, I at risk of not actually having that. So thinking about this career path actually becomes and how you navigate your career through this funnel over time is really, really, really important. And as I say, it takes around for an undergraduate or graduate student coming out and being recruited in, maybe they get 3 or 4 years of experience somewhere. That's a 7 to 10 year apprenticeship for reasons I'm going to talk about in a second. The learning curves you have to go through. You can imagine you're already a 45-year-old oil and gas professional. McKinsey taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, we think you might be a contributor to our business." You might be asking some questions. How long is it going to take me to progress from consultant to owner? Is that even a possibility? And how much time do I have to spend as an owner before I start to really earn the value that be positioned for the opportunities that presents? Good questions to ask as part of the recruitment exercise. Now, let's just talk a little bit about back to this funnel. I'll show you what happens if you tip the funnel on its side. Now you have a funnel looks like this. There's my funnel structure, there's my little pinch point, and there's my funnel out the back end. Imagine, remember that that little chart I showed at the outset, which was my little bullseye structure. So that bullseye structure is the top of the funnel. And then inside here, all kinds of individuals who are navigating their career through navigating their career through the time at the business or the firm where they're at. Everyone in the firm, all the similar professionals, are all managing, manipulating, and maneuvering their careers down through this funnel so that they can reach the pinch point and get themselves through the pinch point and become an owner in the business. That's the principal target. What's interesting is you're not competing against these other balls. You'd think you were, but you're not. The demand for consulting is unlimited. It's unlimited. It's only limited by your ability to position what you offer to the market as advice. It's an unlimited demand. And this takes a little kind of get your head around this. People inside these consulting firms, they'll often sort of imaginary rivalries between these different circles, right? And it's illusory. There's no competition here. The competition is between your business results and what the market is prepared to pay for. So the second, therefore, obvious question then is, if you get into consulting, if your behavior in a corporate world is to be very competitive because there's only few places for promotion, and so you have to be rivals with your peers, et cetera, and that doesn't work in consulting at all, because you're not competing with these people, your colleagues here for work. If you've defined your career successfully, so that you are, you've found your niche, if you like, you're not competing with anybody else. You're competing against your own business results, your targets, and the demand in the market. And this is a big shift for people kind of coming into these firms. Mentally, you have to move away, if you're in a corporate world, away from the aggressive ladder climbing behavior and become far more collaborative, cooperative, and working together, because it's what really drives success in this industry, in consulting. So that's the funnel, and let me just sort of I'll show you what that now looks like if we just get rid of all of the hand drawing. Looks like that. So think about your career if you're kind of working your way through it. One of the secrets of success is there's no rivalry between these people in firms. It's actually highly collaborative. It's competitive, but only in the outside world sense, not on the inside. And actually competitive behavior internally is quite harmful, because it creates the wrong sets of decisions and choices when it comes to serving and meeting clients. That's very different in oil and gas. In oil and gas, if you're in the upstream, you may be competing for scarce capital so that you can do work on your well service or your well site. So there's firms intentionally create some internal rivalry so that the best opportunities get prosecuted. No, that's not how consulting works at all. It's a very different cultural feeling when you're inside. So there's secret number three. Different culture internally, very different. And if that's not your makeup, if you're not naturally collaborative and you naturally want to work with other people, you will find yourself very quickly culturally banging into the culture of consulting, and then realizing, oh, this doesn't really quite fit what I'm set up and how I'm most successful. So think about your career, and these concepts, these structures, actually really key. Let's talk about next one is next secret of consulting is selling versus doing. Now, doing, I like to characterize this as building the spreadsheet, building the PowerPoint deck, writing the document, doing the analysis, running the workshop, getting people on board. This is the doing part of consulting. There's also a selling part in consulting. And the selling part is convincing people who wouldn't otherwise retain a consultant to do something, that they should retain some outside help to get tasks done. And that's the selling action or selling activity. If we were to draw it as a matrix, it would look like a 2x2 matrix, or a little chart. It would look like, whoops, let me just change layers here. There we go. 2x2 matrix looks like this. Let me see if I can straighten that line out. Isn't that lovely? So this is percent of effort, how much time you spend. So say from 100, 0. And this is time on the job or in the role. And the graph looks like this. Now, how do you interpret this? Well, this means that very early in your career, say here, year 1, the vast majority of your time is going to be spent doing. You're going to be doing stuff. You're going to be the least expensive resource, the least experienced resource. You're going to be the one given the spreadsheets to go work on. And your time spent selling work is actually quite low. This is the selling side, doing versus selling. You can see what happens though. Over time, as you become more expensive, more because you're being paid more, and more distant from the actual hands-on, then you spend a great deal more of your time selling and very, very little of your time actually doing. So what's the subtlety here? Well, the subtlety is most of us in industry, coming in working in oil and gas, we've never been taught anything about selling. Like, we don't even have the basics. Like, what does selling even mean? It's a pretty scary word, really. I have to go sell? Like, what does that even mean? And so you can imagine the like a bit of trepidation here, right? You've just joined this consulting firm, and day 3 they say, now go out there and sell. Like, what? Did I sign up for this? Yes, you did. You did sign up for this. If you're at a very, very high salary, then you're going to spend a great deal of your time selling. And I'll sort of explain why that is. We'll just do a little bit of math here. Let me close that off. So here's the kind of rules of thumb in consulting that you might want to take on. One of the rules is 30, 30, 30. And this is 30% of your business economics are salary, 30% is expenses, and 30% is profit. So if you think about it in these terms, let's say you are a new consultant, your salary is 100K per year, then you need to be 1/3 of, if your salary is 1/3 of your total revenue, so that this equation holds true, you need to be billing to the tune of $300,000 per year. That's the money, the value you should be getting from the market for your services as a consultant. Well, what happens if you're a very senior oil and gas professional and you just rolled in from ExxonMobil, you're used to be working in supply chain, you're expecting $250,000 per year because that's how much you were paid at Exxon. Why would you get anything less? You need to be billing $750,000 a year just to pay your weight, just to pay for you as part of the salary, part of the equation. I gotta tell you, that's a big order. That's a tall order. Because if you thought you were worth 250 in Exxon, you actually have to convince somebody in the market to pay triple that to retain you and have you working as a supply chain professional in the community. Selling versus doing. Most professionals, in my experience, that have been struggle with, making the transition from large industry into consulting, is that this learning curve that you have to get around here, the learning curve on selling, learning how to sell, and learning that as fast as possible. That is probably the biggest single hurdle that people have to very, very quickly get over so that they can fit into the context of the consulting business model. Remember, I said my friend with Richard, who did really, really well. He was a natural salesman because he started his career first in oil and gas, then he became a university professor, then he became an investment banker for oil and gas. He learned selling as an investment banker, and the going from investment banking to consulting actually is quite easy. I found that if you're, say, a subsurface professional, you're deep in engineering expertise and so on, you probably haven't had anything close to the amount of time you would really need to figure out how to convince other people to open their wallets and spend money on your ideas. And so the selling curve is particularly challenging. You might ask, oh yeah, but surely if they've hired me out of big oil, I'm going to get some time to learn this, right? Well, yes, you'll get time. You'll get 2 years. The first year, you're going to be finding your feet. So year 1 and then year 2. By year 2, you better be showing some progress, or the firm's appetite to continue to carry you economically may start to diminish. So you don't have a ton of time for this. And I think the patience in the consulting industry for very expensive senior professionals who are not billing very highly, but they're not selling either, is generally speaking quite low. Consulting is a fixed cost business. When you look at the P&L or the balance sheet of a consulting business, what are you going to see? Well, on the balance sheet, you're going to see some furniture, some computers, but not much else. It's all salary. So and people, once you sign up, you expect to be paid. So your salary is a very, very high fixed cost component of this business, which really compels the business to be doing 2 things really, really well. 1, doing great work so that consultants will hire you, or customers will hire you over and over and over again. And 2, great at selling, convincing companies to hire you to do the work. So the selling doing conundrum, major question for people coming into consulting. You have to figure this one out. And the firms themselves, they are principally, you may remember, I said it's an apprenticeship model, 7 to 10 years for the juniors to learn all of this stuff. It's an apprenticeship model. So there aren't a ton of training courses offered internally to how to become a great sales professional. That you learn by doing an apprenticeship. And so there's another challenge for the senior person joining. You're not going to get the 7 to 10 years because you're a very expensive professional. How do you learn these things quickly? And I think one of the secrets is go in eyes wide open and with a very clear, it should be asking the question if you're being recruited. What is the expectation on me for selling? And what support are you going to give me to learn that? Because I don't know how to do that. It's not something that's been part of my my world in oil and gas. And listen to the answer really carefully. Like, are they prepared to give you much time? And are they prepared to give you some resources so that you can go learn how to do this in a safe way, a faster way? A few things though. The bigger your outside network, the better chances you are of selling work. And this is a bit of a challenge. I remember engaging with some professionals from Shell. Shell, 40,000 people inside Shell. And so I remember asking the professional, how come your LinkedIn profile, you're a big senior guy at Shell, why is your LinkedIn profile show only 300 connections? He said, well, I don't need all these connections. I just talk to people inside Shell. Well, that's great until you're no longer at Shell. Now you discover you got no network. So another secret to this, if you want to be successful in consulting and you know you're going to be called on to sell work, you might want to have a nice, rich outside network. And so pay attention to LinkedIn. So because that's how you build your network, is you do it through these online tools. That's how it's done. There's nothing worse than being, thank you for your service. We're downsizing and you're no longer going to be part of our team. And here's your package. You walk out the door and you go over to LinkedIn, and every single one of your LinkedIn contacts who were working with you are all in the exact same boat. And none of you know anybody because you haven't invested the time to build the outside network. Very important. Build the outside network. Easy to do. Super easy. The tools online really make this a very, very simple thing to do. Now, a couple of other thoughts. Some firms, not all, will actually have a material separation between selling professionals and doing professionals. They may actually have like a separate professional sales organization, in which case your responsibilities for learning to sell might be very, very limited. That would be very worth knowing before you go in, because if they have a professional sales organization that's selling stuff, so you don't have to do that, your chances of success just went up because you don't have to take that task on. So worth asking the question, who's doing the selling in your consulting organization? Is that going to be falling on me, or is that going to be in the hands of the professionals? I have found when the consulting organizations are selling long-standing services, like an outsourcing contract. You're going to come and outsource your business to me, parts of your business. There will be a professional sales organization that's nurturing these things because they take a long time to line up and close. And the contracts are very specific and complicated, and it's not something you give to just everybody to do. In those instances, there will be a demarcation between people who are selling and doing, which again behooves you. You need to ask and answer the question before you go in. Another point I wanted to make was I remember lots of junior consultants would go, I don't want to be a salesman. It's so greasy. It's like used car people. I'm just not interested in that. Not the right attitude, in my view. Selling, once you learn how to do it, even a little bit, is a skill set that can, one, never be taken away from you. And number two, lasts your lifetime. And number three, you can apply over and over and over again to all manner of different careers. Incredibly useful skill. Some consultants would say to me, I've never had any experience selling. Have you ever had to sit down with a child and convince them to eat their vegetables and they didn't want to? Or, hey, convince somebody to, let's go to this restaurant, that restaurant? You are selling. You're selling someone whose natural inclination is to not do something. You're convincing them that they should do it. So selling skills, we all have them as humans because we have to convince people all the time to do things against their will. But it's just a question of whether you can codify it and put it into repeatable practices and processes that work in a more industrial setting. Selling versus doing, really, really key. Let's go on.
We wanted to take some questions. We had a couple questions
pop up. Fire away.
To give you a chance to answer those.
Sure. Yep.
Sanjay is asking, what are the typical responsibilities of an owner or partner within a consulting organization?
Yeah, as distinct from, say, an employee, right? Mm-hmm. So the owner is going to have to make decisions about hiring and firing, right? The employees don't do that. That's the owners take down that job. The owners will make decisions about whether they should open offices or close offices. They make decisions about where to allocate their own resources. Do I invest it in this program, this service, this industry? Owners make decisions. Let's say, for instance, you're competing for work, and you're up against another consulting firm, and you have some information that says they're going to bid the job at X, and that's dramatically less than what you were prepared to bid on. The owners get to make the decision. Do I drop my price so I can pursue that work? The employees don't get to do that. So there's just a handful of things that are distinct.
And then he also asked in terms of the variance in time, you said 7 to 10 years,
Yep.
how much difference is that from company to company? And then he asked about the post-grad studies. Is that part of that time? How does that, so I guess a little more conversation about the variance in time.
Time.
And
Yeah. Well, in the context of the big firms, they will often have the pre time that you've spent in industry, say before your postgraduate degree. Did your undergrad, did some work, did your postgrad, and now you're looking for work. That 2 or 3 years that you may have spent in industry will absolutely be counted into your 7 to 10 years of apprenticeship. The tricky bit is it won't, if you're 15 years in there, very often consulting firms will say, well, yes, you have 15 years of experience, but it is the same year of experience repeated 15 times. It's not the same thing as 15 years of diverse experience. So there's a trade-off there that they'll often make. And postgraduate degrees, generally speaking, very valuable, because you can charge a higher rate in the market because you have the higher level of education. So postgraduate degrees, very, very, very worthwhile.
all right. And then Daniel was asking about transitioning smoothly,
Yep.
and he asked, should I start consulting on the side or take the leap immediately? So I think it's worth talking about the type of consulting that we're referencing in terms of this model.
Yeah, well, this is consulting from big oil to big consulting. So the transition into large organizations, they going into leaving and jumping in, or let's go use Daniel to your question. Can I do this sort of part-time or not? You can. It can create competitive problems and conflicts of interest. Because so you have to navigate that one quite carefully. Consulting on the side is often perceived in big consulting firms as a strict no-no, because you could find yourself competing directly with your other employer. So that's not on. If you're in an oil and gas company and you're doing consulting work, they could also view that as being in conflict of interest. You have to navigate very carefully that one. In terms of should you jump in and go in whole hog, consulting is its own industry. I'm not sure you can be successful dabbling in it. You're either in it or you're not. And so my counsel would be, if you take on, let's say you're in oil and gas and you do a project where you're working shoulder to shoulder with consultants and you go, oh, I think I could do that, jump in. Don't waste time doing dabbling, because what you're going to have to learn to be successful is very daunting, even as a sole practitioner. Sales, service, pricing your work, everything. You very steep learning curve. I'd jump in personally.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Let's talk about the leverage model, because different consulting firms have different leverage models. And it's very important, if you can ask the question, to find out what their leverage model actually is. So the leverage model is the ratio of owners to staff and its relationship to how much they charge in the marketplace. So the billing rate. Imagine a billing rate of $2,000 an hour, and you might go, huh? Yeah, that's McKinsey. That's what they can charge. Or someone who's doing work in a sort of a legal, like as an expert witness, you can charge that. Low end might be $150 an hour. Your ratio of partner to staff, you might have an owner of the business has 5 employees. Maybe there's 10, maybe there's 50. There is a curve which goes like that on the chart. At every point of this chart, the owner makes the same amount of money, same amount of profit. This is your billing rate on this side. I'll just put this back in here, your billing rate. At any point on this chart, the owner's making the same amount of money. Very useful to know what the billing rate is and the leverage model, because it tells you a great deal about how the organization is structured internally. You can imagine if you're the McKinsey model, where you're one partner, 5 staff working on projects, very strategic, very expensive, board level CEO relationships. On the other hand, if you're an outsourcer from India, Wipro, Tata, you're charging your staff at $150 an hour. You can have one partner with 50, 60, 70 people. What are you more comfortable with? What's your goals? It's back to, if you don't understand the goal, you find yourself in the wrong firm really quickly. The Deloitte world, where I was working, was in this range in here. It was in the 10 to 15 staff per owner. And that's a pretty good size from a team building standpoint and structure standpoint. Get your head, you can manage that. When you get into this 50-person businesses, you're talking gigantic SAP projects, big outsourcing contracts, very different business models, and but still consulting. So knowing the leverage model actually has a considerable bearing on how you might, like, what kind of firm and what's the culture going to be like when you go into it. So there you go. Tip number 6. Now I want to talk a little bit about any questions before we move on. Phil, anything else on the wires?
Nope, you've addressed them all.
All right. So as I say, it's the same income is the same at any point on the curve. Let's turn to learning curves. This is probably my favorite topic of all. This is why transition consulting for many professionals is so challenging. So it's the learning curve problem. So let me just draw the little diagram again. Little straight lines. There we go. So on this axis is competence, different levels of different kinds of competencies. And this axis is time. And time is just going to be divided into 2 parts, year 1 and year 2. Now the first competence, and competence will say this axis will be high, this one will be low. Now I've already seen the first problem, which is your sales curve competence looks like this. So in the space of just a year to 2 years, you've got to get yourself up that sales learning curve as quickly as possible. So you might say, oh, well, that's not so bad. It's just one curve. Yeah, and you have a point. It's not too bad. You have a second learning curve already, which is the reason that you got hired in the first place. And if you're in oil and gas, it's because you know oil and gas. So you don't have to learn too much about that. So that's your industry expertise is locked and loaded, provided you're joining and consulting in that industry. If you're in oil and gas and supply chain and you go join a supply chain organization, you might find yourself doing supply chain in the airline industry. Well, your oil and gas industrial know-how might not be all that valuable at that point. But if you're going from industry oil and gas to consulting in oil and gas, you have a high competence already on one learning curve. There will be a subject that you're going to have to learn. And the reason for this is because the subjects that consultants deal with, let's go back to supply chain. Let's say you're a supply chain person in Exxon. Well, you know the Exxon way to do supply chain, but you don't know the Chevron way to do supply chain because you haven't worked at Chevron. You're going, and you don't know Devon, and you don't know Hess, and you don't know Marathon, you don't know Conoco. But if you're going to be truly considered an expert in a supply chain in oil and gas, you're going to have to become master of a subject you already think you're a master of, because there are so many different ways to do things. There's a learning curve, and you don't have a ton of time to get over it. Fortunately, it's probably the fastest one to go through to learn, but don't ignore it. It's there. The next learning curve is the actual service learning curve. Now, let's say the service you're working on is supply chain. And how do you deliver supply chain consulting services? You're going to have to learn the language of the firm you've joined, their methods, their tools, their approach, how they structure their teams. All that stuff is proprietary to the consulting firm you've joined. So you're going to have to learn that on top of everything else. Fortunately, every other consultant who joins these businesses has to learn the same stuff. So lucky for you, this is standard internal consulting training. So all you have to do is just quickly get yourself on the training courses, and you'll learn the stuff. That's why that curve is not so daunting to get through. It's programmed, it's part of your indoctrination and joining, and it's pretty straightforward to become successful in it. I did say, though, that you have joined another industry, and the next learning curve you have to learn is how to be a consultant. The learning to be a consultant is its own thing. And this is something that is the apprenticeship model, like this one and this one. These two are how when they kind of you learn how to do this in consulting. It's the apprenticeship 7 to 10 year model for the juniors, the fresh out of university. But for senior people, you've got to learn this stuff really fast, really quickly. And because it's an apprenticeship model, there aren't training courses on how to do this. So you have to figure your way out through this one really quickly. As I say, your advantage is if you've come from another consulting firm, and if you look at people who are, say, in KPMG or Deloitte or PwC, you'd be surprised how many actually had a prior career at Ernst & Young or KPMG or PwC. Like, they move around quite a bit. And the reason they've done that is because they either found themselves unable to they already mastered these two puzzle pieces, so they're able to change companies quite quickly and become more successful. But for industrial professionals who've come directly out of oil and gas, you've got to crack the code on this particular problem. It is not easy, and it is not quick. And as I say, you got a tight time window. Let me just share that. That's the chart. So when you get the learning pack from this, the Masterclass pack, this is what we'll send this off to you. Last thing I want to talk about very quickly is I'm going to call the golden ratios. Already shared one, 30, 30, 30. And the next one I want to share is 70% times 70%. 70%. This is your billing rate. And this is your utilization or hours. Making money in consulting is very simple. How many hours did you work? How many dollars per hour did you charge? And you multiply those two together, and that's the economics of the business. As it turns out, you can set your billing rate at the start of the year at, say, $1,000 an hour. Good luck with that. And you're going to work 2,000 hours per year. As you can see, that's a $2 million business, just like that. But can you really get $1,000 an hour? And can you really work 2,000 hours a year? Probably not. So these businesses are economically designed to run at a 70% billing rate of average billing rate and a 70% utilization rate. Or if you multiply those two together, 49%. What that means is there's a huge amount of latent capacity in these businesses to make money. So if they're purely economic and very interesting at 70 times 70, they are extraordinary when they get into higher utilization rates and higher leverage models. Just a quick example I'll share. I used to work in Hong Kong with Deloitte. And in North America, we were on the 30-30-30 model, but the Hong Kong auditors, their leverage model wasn't 1 to 15, it was 1 to 50 as auditors. And the billing rate for their staff wasn't 1/3, it was 1/8. So not only did they have 3 times the leverage, but they had triple the dollars per hour for their staff. And they make extraordinary. Well, these businesses, if you get them working well, they're extremely economic and very attractive. And that's one of the reasons why, you get tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, why don't you come on over and consider joining us. So there you are. There's seven little tips about the industry, your career funnel, getting your career ball shaped, the time it takes you to get through, the learning curves, and how those affect the leverage model, this whole selling versus doing phenomenon. This is the sort of thing that distinguishes consultants from industrial professionals. And Phil, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, so we have a couple of more questions I wanted to give you a chance to answer. So asking about the importance of financial expertise.
Very important as you get further along in your career, very handy. But I would also say if you're involved in strategic consulting, in other words, helping organizations make decisions around investment of capital, having a good handle on financials is extremely valuable. If you're a human resources professional and you're helping do things like strategic workforce planning, not that relevant. So it depends.
And then the final question was asking about the difference between contracting for a company and consulting.
Very interesting. So there's a tax angle there. If you're contracting to a company, you can set yourself up as a private corporation or professional corporation, and your business expenses for doing contracting work you can write off against your income. So there's a tax play for that. As a consultant, you don't get that play. You're just an employee. So that's a one significant difference. Second is with contractors. After you pass a certain amount of time as a contractor working for a specific company, many tax authorities deem you to be an employee, and then they will pull away from you your tax advantage. That's a bit awkward. Um, the contracting model, though it can be very successful and very lucrative, and it's a great way to try. The challenges with contracting, you're very much doing as a contractor, and you're really not doing much selling because that's not part of. So what you've done is you've managed your career so that you're on the doing side. That's fine, but it does come with some risks. If the contract is shut down, how are you going to find and sell another contract? You've done no selling or learned how to do all that. So it's a bit risky, but if you can pull it off, it's lucrative.
You've heard Geoffrey talk about the industries and opportunities, specifically the importance of knowing the back end of the industry and understanding a lot of the industry. I wanted to take these last few minutes and highlight how the engineering career program, specifically the step two, which is the piece that Geoffrey just walked everyone through, fits into the program and the opportunities that signing up for this industries and opportunities module can bring you. First, this when Geoffrey and I were developing this program, the tool that he turned me on to and was a huge change for me in terms of helping me understand the potential of the specific industries and the opportunities within those industries. During step two of the engineer career program, we teach you a powerful method that allows you to think about the forces shaping the world. That way you can decide the best industry for you, whether it's consulting or whether it's taking your specific domain experience, say in supply chain, and then moving them into another industry that is poised for opportunities. And after you go through the course and take it, you'll be prepared to identify the specific industries and opportunities that you are best set up for and prepared to enter and be successful in your career, so that in this time of mergers and downsizing, you can take control of your career and move in the best direction for you.